Sure. This is Jonathan Formicella from Town Council. Currently, if you are online, the video is showing you only 4 members of the Town Council. This is due to a technical difficulty. You can hear us and you can see about half of us currently. You are still able to participate online during public participation, or if any Town Council members are logged in online or have called in may still participate, but that is the reason why you cannot see the whole council at this time. Please note that this meeting is being conducted as a hybrid meeting in compliance with the governor's executive orders. All participants may attend remotely or in person. This meeting is being conducted in real time and is open to the public, and any member of the public may listen or view this meeting anonymously. A copy of the agenda and any related materials have been posted to the Town of Monroe website for public inspection. Notice is hereby given that only 250 participants may access this hybrid meeting remotely at any one time. Remote access is granted solely by the technology provider and is not controlled by the Town of Monroe. In the unlikely event it appears that we are approaching said limit, the chairman retains the right to adjourn and continues the meeting at a later date using technology appropriate to ensure all members of the public may participate. This meeting is being recorded, and while we ask those attending remotely to mute your microphones unless recognized to speak, anything you say, do, or is displayed on your screen may become part of the recording, which will be posted to the town's website within 7 days. The use of the chat features is prohibited and will not be considered during the meeting at any time. Ms. Lapellis, will you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Roll call. Mr. Mauer is here.
Present.
Ms. Aguilar is here. Ms. Martin is here. Ms. Lapellis is here. Mr. Formicella is here. Mr. O'Rourke is here. Ms. Donnelly Wales is here. Mr. Reed, are you here?
I am.
And Mr. Rooney, are you here? One more time, Mr. Rooney, are you here? Mr. Rooney is not here. All right. Item 3, election of temporary chairman of the Town Council.
Mr. Formicella, I nominate John Formicella as temporary chairman of the Town Council.
Is there a second?
Second.
Sean O'Rourke, second. Are there any other nominations? Are there any other nominations? Okay. All those in favor of electing Jonathan Formicella to be temporary chairman of the Town Council, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, say nay. The ayes have it. Thank you very much. Election of chairman of Town Council.
Mr. Formicella, I nominate John Formicella as the chair of the Town Council.
Ms. Lapellis with the motion.
Second.
Mr. O'Rourke with the second. Are there any other nominations?
Mr. Formicella, I nominate Dee Dee Martin as chair of the Town Council.
Jason Mauer has motioned to have Dee Dee Martin as chair of Town Council. Seconded by Jen Aguilar. Okay, we will take the nomination, Ms. Martin first. All those in favor of Ms. Martin to be permanent chairman of the Town Council, please say aye.
Aye.
Mr. Mr. Reed, are you voting in favor?
I am not.
Or no? Okay. All those against, say nay.
Nay.
Nay. The final vote was 3-5. Now the main motion, all those in favor of Jonathan Formicella to serve as permanent chairman of the Town Council, please say aye.
Aye.
Mr. Reed?
Aye.
And all those opposed?
Nay.
Nay.
Motion carries 5-3. Thank you very much for your confidence in me. I'd like to thank Enid for her many, many, many years of wonderful service, both on the town council and as chairman of the town council. Enid has been an incredible mentor to everyone on the town council, especially myself. And I just want to let her know how much we all appreciate her and her dedicated service to the town of Monroe, both as an elected official and as an educator.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Election of vice chairman of the town council. I'd like to make a motion to nominate Enid Lapellis as vice chairman of the town council.
Second.
Seconded by Mr. O'Rourke. Are there any other nominations?
Mr. Formicella, I nominate Dee Dee Martin as vice chairman or chairperson of the town council.
Mr. Maurer with a motion to nominate Dee Dee Martin as vice chair of the town council.
Second.
There's a second by Ms. Aguilar. We will take the the nomination of Dee Dee Martin as vice chair of the town council. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. I just reflecting that vote. And Mr. Reed, are you voting in favor?
I am not.
Okay. All those against, say nay.
Nay.
Nay. This motion fails 3-5. We'll take the first motion on the floor. All those in favor of Enid Lapellis to serve as vice chairman of the town council, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Mr. Reed?
Aye.
And all those against?
Nay.
Nay.
That motion passes 5-3. Congratulations, Madam Vice Chair.
Thank you.
We have the consent calendar. I will pass the consent calendar unless there is an objection to me doing so. Hearing no objection, I pass the consent calendar as presented. Communications. I would like to add a Communication R. This afternoon we received a piece of public participation from Nick Kapoor of 109 Meadows End Road here in Monroe, Connecticut. I asked that be included in our communications as letter R, public participation. First, I'll ask anyone in the town council chambers, if you would like to publicly participate, please come forward. Anyone wishing to participate? I will now ask if there is anyone online to please unmute yourself if you would like to participate during our public participation period. Please do so right now. I'll ask one more time. Is there anyone online or has called in that would like to participate? To please unmute your microphone and begin speaking by identifying yourself. Hearing no one wanting to publicly participate either in person or online, I am moving on to the action items. First action item, A, Town Council Committee on Finance, Education, Health, and Public Safety Matters. First, I'd like to appoint Donalyn Wales to the subcommittee, filling the spot of Tony Scott. Is there anyone from that committee that would like to give a report this evening? Hearing none, moving on to planning, zoning, public works, and park and recreation matters. Is there anyone who wishes to report anything for this category? Ms. Martin?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I keep looking up there like I can see something. I'm not sure whether Missy, the chairman of Park and Rec, is online, whether she had any comments that she wanted to make, you want to inquire?
Sure. Is our Director of Parks and Recreation Matters on the...
I had no departmental report.
No department report? No department report.
The committee has a meeting scheduled on Thursday at 6 o'clock.
Correct, is that correct?
Yeah, that's, it's actually our subcommittee, or our council committee,
Right, that's correct.
right, 6 o'clock on
The one that's
Thursday.
being, this current action.
All right. Anything else, Ms. Martin?
No.
Okay. All right. Next, Town Council Committee on Legislative and Administrative Matters. Mr. Reed.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We discussed 6 items of new business tonight. The Anna Lee Performing Artist engagement, that was part of your consent calendar, our consent calendar, and then 5 items that are agenda items: Energy Resources USA installment, Valley Emergency, the Ademia Identity and Security USA LLC live scan system, sales agreement, pay plan, and the positions in classified service, which will be an agenda item tonight, and Economic and Community Development Director job description. So all of those, with the exception of A, which was the Anna Lee, is on the consent calendar. All of those reached consensus to come to council tonight once agenda comes up. We also, for the first time in a bit, we talked about the blight ordinance. We are going to be meeting as an L&A subcommittee. Yourself, Mr. Chair, and Councilman Maurer and I, sometime towards the end of July. I believe that date is the 27th, and we're going to re-engage a conversation on requirements for blight, principled discussion, and make sure that we have it in due time, an actionable possible change to the blight ordinance. That's obviously why we're looking at it. We want to make sure that it's up to date and it meets the needs of the town. So we'll see what happens there. We did not get to item B, discussion of appointments and vacancy, but I would like to have Mr. Chair, Mr. Chair, so you understand, we are going to be taking that up after the blight ordinance is decided, and that's the L&A subcommittee.
Thank you, Mr. Reed.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, Mr. Maurer.
If I can just add to that, if any council members do have any comments that they would like to be part of that blight discussion, to make sure that you get those comments to one of the L&A members so that we can bring that up within our discussions on the subcommittee.
And when this meeting can be,
July 27th.
have that down. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Maurer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Moving on to D, Strategic Planning Committee. I am appointing Donna Lynn Wales to be a member of the Strategic Planning Committee in place of Tony Scott. EMS Building Committee, Mr. Rooney is not here this evening. However, we did just have a public meeting where the bonding for the bonding in the amount of $4.1 million was approved at this town meeting. Moving on to the Open Space and Preservation Acquisition Committee, Mr. O'Rourke, do you have any update for that?
No, I have no update at this time, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. O'Rourke. And finally, the First Selectman's update.
Thank you. Sorry, I meant to start passing these down earlier. Just a few things to report tonight, all regarding funds, money in some way or another. First, we got some good news from KERMA. They released their figures for equity distribution this year. Last year it was just south of $27,000. In 2019 we received $62,000. This year we've been notified that we will be receiving $72,739 from KERMA. Again, that is our pro rata share of KERMA's declared equity distribution for this year. This will be the 10th distribution of equity from KERMA since they started the program in 2011. The second item I was going to update you on is on the state budget and municipal aid. Thank you. On June 23rd, the governor signed the legislation adopted by the General Assembly, which enacted the state's biennial budget. I'm very happy to report that all municipal aid was left intact, inclusive of our current level of educational cost sharing, or ECS. As many of you know, Monroe has been on a program whereby over a multi-year period, our ECS funding has been lowered year over year to get to what the state has determined to be the appropriate level based on their formula.
We've been notified that the formula levels will be resuming in fiscal year 24. So that year we will start seeing reductions again until we reach the state's target in fiscal year 30. All municipalities are supposed to reach their funding level by fiscal year 30. The formula itself, however, has also changed in the state's budget. So while we have kind of general information on how the formula is derived, what we don't have is a specific walkthrough of here are Monroe's numbers and feed them into the formula, and here's the output, so we know exactly what we could anticipate our adjustments to be in those outer years. I have asked for more specifics on that with projected amounts, knowing that some of those formula-driven change because they're variables that are based upon things that change over year to year. But that said, we should expect that, I would hope that we will get more specificity on projected amounts well before our need to prepare budgets in fiscal year 24. And last but not least, just to report back on the American Rescue Plan funds that I reported on at a prior meeting. We were to receive the first half of those funds within 30 days of the state receiving funds from the U.S. Treasury. We did receive just under $2.9 million on June 22nd, which was the expected amount. Those funds have been isolated in the general fund, and we will continue to, we're still obtaining further guidance on the use of those funds that have to be obligated by the end of 2024. And as I said, we're continuing to meet, and we'll be having further discussions with the Council, the Board of Finance, when we have more complete information and a projected or proposed plan on how we utilize those funds. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kellogg. We have no matters of unfinished business this evening. New business. Vice Chair Lapellis.
I move that the Town Council accept the following donations. One, $1,500 from Newtown Savings Bank to Sprint of Monroe. Two, $3,000 from Victorinox Swiss Army for Sprint for Monroe. Three, $2,000 from Monroe First Foundation for the Senior Center Program Fund.
Thank you.
Seconded.
Thank you, Mr. Lapellis. Seconded by Jason Maurer. Discussion, Mr. Kellogg.
Well, for the first two, I'll just again echo my ongoing thanks to two companies that have long-standing history of supporting the town, Newtown and Victorinox Swiss Army, obviously both for a really good cause in Sprint for Monroe. The last donation is, for full disclosure, is from the foundation that I run to run we put on the first Selectmen's Golf Outing. And as we had done in the prior year, we were pleased to donate $2,000 to the Senior Center Program Fund to support their activities there.
Thank you, Mr. First Selectman, for that very generous donation. I'd also like to send the Town Council's thanks to Newtown Savings Bank and Victorinox Swiss Army for their donations to the Sprint for Monroe project. Any other discussion?
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Mr. Maurer.
I just, obviously, thanks for all of these. I do want to just highlight the importance of the Senior Center Program Fund and these funds coming in. Having served on the Commission on Aging for a long time, I worked directly with the Senior Center, and I know that many years they were struggling to get funding. So the fact that this money goes into there is a huge help, and I know it's greatly appreciated. So I just wanted to highlight that and say thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Maurer. Is there any other discussion? Hearing no other discussion, I'm going to call for a vote. All those in favor of accepting these donations, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Mr. Reed?
Aye.
And all those against? Hearing none, this motion passes 8-0. Item B, Resolution 21-73, to consider and act upon a resolution regarding shared services agreement. Vice Chair Lapellis.
I move that the Town Council adopt Resolution 21-73. Resolved that Kenneth M. Kellogg, First Selectman of the Town of Monroe, is authorized to execute and deliver on behalf of the Town of Monroe the shared services agreement and any associated documents by and between the Monroe Board of Education and the shared Director of Finance.
Thank you, Ms. Lapellis. Is there a second?
Seconded.
Seconded by Jason Maurer. Discussion. Mr. Kellogg.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So you'll recall, we've had many conversations about this concept. There's been a memorandum of agreement that's been in place for quite some time now to operate a joint director of finance position. And as we had discussed at a PEPS meeting where we had both some Board of Ed and Board of Finance participation, as well as myself and the superintendent and the finance director, proceeded forward to memorialize that in a permanent arrangement. I want to thank our town attorney for helping craft an agreement in that regard between us and the Board of Education. Our HR director, Mr. Hirsch and Mr. Banowski, both worked to finalize the proposal, which is in your reading packet. And again, as I said, the town attorney has created a shared services agreement for consideration. The town by memo was still under consideration by both bodies. The Board of I understand the Board of Education has adopted or has approved the MOA, or I'm sorry, it's now a shared services agreement, and so it simply remains for the town council to now act upon this. That said, turn the floor over to you, and happy to entertain any questions. I know the superintendent is here, Mr. Banowski is here as well. Any questions you may have.
Thank you, Mr. Kellogg. Mr. Cobbs, do you have anything that you would like to say?
This position, developed out of a sense of urgency on my part, and we were in horrible straits at the time this was started. And I think this is the first selectman, for first of all, great in the first place to allow for the shared service and to have the MOA initially in place for in the past, from that first time in January when this started, then 2 months later we were into the pandemic. We went into the MOA with the idea of, hey, let's take a look and see if we can shared service would be viable. And then, all heck broke loose with the pandemic, and quite honestly, it was tough to see the forest for the trees. I'd say for, we're going on 18 months of this now. I think for the first 12 months, it was just difficult to try to figure out, which end up with, the technology situation we were in, and then the pandemic. I think we've had a really good opportunity to kind of, see the light at the end of the tunnel here. And I just see the benefits have so far outweighed, any drawbacks. The three biggest things that we always talk about is, from my seat, from what I know, communication has been fantastic. Transparency, I think, is key to making this great as possible. That has been, right up there. And the credibility that, between, the town, Board of Education. I think for years there's a lot of finger pointing on both sides. I think that has gone away. We're in a spot now. Things have settled down. Like I said, for the last 6 months, I think we've had a better chance than even the first 12 months to really gauge how we want to lay this out. I think never thank Ron Banowski enough for the work that he's done. Quite frankly, he's got that. And we feel we have a solid structure in place. I'll speak out from my perspective on the Board of Education side. With Ron at the helm and with the assistant director and the other positions, and kind of the little tweaks and changes we've made to each of those positions. The Board of Education did go possibly at the last meeting again.
Thank you, Mr. Cobbs. Mr. Banowski, would you like to share anything with council?
Outside of what Superintendent Cobbs and First Selectman Kellogg have already stated, no.
Thank you very much. We received a communication item earlier this afternoon that asked about the validity, the charter validity of allowing the shared services agreement to go forward. Mr. Town Attorney, has that letter changed your opinion as to the charter validity of the shared services agreement?
Yes,
Yes.
No, I have not. I did take into consideration the provisions of our charter, as well as the provisions that are set forth in recitals of the agreement of the Board of Education policy, relevant to the claims that have been made by Mr. Kapoor and his correspondence to this council. And I obviously would not have drafted an agreement presented to the council if I thought there was any issues with its liability or legality, or certainly if it was in any way, shape, or form in violation of our charter. I do not believe it is. And I think you read the correspondence from Mr. Kapoor, although he does point to provisions that in the charter that he deems to be violative. I think that he is certainly imputing a terms that are not included in the charter or the agreement, and trying to stretch the purpose, the inherent purpose of the agreement. So it does not change my opinion whatsoever. I do think that it conforms to the charter, and in fact, the one thing that I think may have been brought before wasn't the last meeting, but this has been done in other communities, and it's nice to hear Superintendent Costa talk about the transparency of the agreement, and the one common theme amongst all the other communities that have engaged in this type of shared service in the finance department, seems to be the most common within IT, of course, was that the position provided transparency. And one other thing I would note is the finance director is not a position that advocates the budget for either the town or education. Rather, they're more, his role is more of a controller for the town, and to make sure that the checks and balances are put in place. So I think over politicizing the effect of this, which I think is what's being done with that letter, it's certainly not the intent. I don't think that it certainly would come to fruition in any way, shape, or form. So I do not, in conclusion, did not change my opinion. I do think that there's no delegation of the person's first selectman duties as it relates to the town, and certainly the appointment of the finance director, which is the charter, is being accomplished. The fact that the finance director is also serving an ancillary purpose, I do not think in any shape or form invalidates the agreement.
Thank you very much. Is there any other discussion on this matter? Mr. Monroe.
First and foremost, I'd actually like to agree. As many members of this council and public know, I am a stickler when it comes to charter. And when we first raised the possibility of this position, I raised the fact that there may be charter issues, and I think the drafting was done in a way that does not violate the charter or the Board of Education policy. It was certainly a fine needle to thread, but I do believe that this agreement as drafted does thread it. That being said, there are some other concerns that I do have that I would like to ask a few questions of the superintendent and finance director, if that is all right with you, Mr. Chair.
Briefly.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It's my understanding that the deputy directors were invited to this meeting, however, felt that they did not need to attend, as they felt that Mr. Bernofsky would be able to answer the questions completely on his own. To me, that infers something from those deputy directors that they have no objection and no problem with this. As such, we've discussed with the selectmen in LNA what would happen if later down the line we do move away from this joint position. And that's where my concern lies, in that suddenly we are with two higher salary deputy directors and the need to hire a new director on each side that could actually result in a budget increase overall. In speaking with the first selectman, he indicated that from the town side, his understanding of the intent and his intent would be to reevaluate at that point both the salaries and the positions, and we may have to reform those departments. Is that similar to your intent and understanding?
I think that's fair to say.
And
yes.
from the finance director. And just from the your perspective of now doing this for so long, as you've stated publicly, but from the deputy directors and yourself, you have not found that with the additional help that's already budgeted into this, that you would need more additional help going forward to be able to run these departments in this manner?
At this time, no.
Wonderful.
No. I mean, I see this as a progression, though. You know, I mean, I think we'll be evaluating it over the next year. I don't think the evaluation of this has ended by any stretch. And we're looking to, make some tweaks to things starting July 1st. But no, I don't anticipate.
It is still my belief that it would have been more beneficial to have had a joint meeting with the Board of Education to discuss this, but as the Board of Education has already voted and approved this, I find that point to be moot. But going forward, I think that's something that we should consider as a council, Mr. Chair. But with that and with the questions answered, I give my support to this.
Thank you, Mr. Maurer. Mr. O'Rourke.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. With regards to this new arrangement that we have before us this evening, Mr. Copsa, are we going to see, or are we seeing a net decrease in, say, the previous arrangement that was previously in force with the finance director on the Board of Ed side?
I'm sorry, a net decrease in salary?
Well, is there a net savings to this arrangement?
Yes.
Do we have an approximation of what that is?
We have a paper that says that.
You want it in total or on those sides? The net savings in total is about $68,000.
$68,000. Okay. Given the the unlikely event that this becomes unwound, and as was outlined by Mr. Maurer, I guess there would be some of those funds that could be incorporated into putting it back to the, as they say, or back to the old way if need be. Do we know if those funds would be sufficient in order to accomplish that, or would we still be operating at a deficit if, in fact, we had to unravel or unwind this agreement?
If we had to unwind this agreement, there'd be a shift in,
Well, the assertion was that if we unwind this agreement, we're going to be impacted negatively on the cost side of this. And you're just telling me that we got approximately $70,000 in savings here, to which I asked, and you answered, that could be applied to the previous arrangement that was typically in place prior to tonight's meeting. And I guess further part of my question is, would that be sufficient to cover that reversal of this arrangement, or would there be further funds necessary?
I wouldn't anticipate there would be further funds necessary. There would be, you'd be unwinding changes made to certain positions.
Right. So in other words, in the unlikely event that we had to unwind or go back to our previous agreements or our previous structure, we would not anticipate that being an additional cost to the town.
No.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. O'Rourke. Is there any other discussion? Ms. Aguilar?
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
Thank you. I noticed that with the job descriptions, the public schools you'll be there, I don't even know who this goes to, for 60% of the time, and municipal 40% of the time. Yet the total salaries for public schools is 54%, and municipal is 45% total. Is that going to be an issue come budget time? Would that be an issue in personnel that they're doing 60% of the work on 54% of the budget of
That's the allocation of my salary.
Right.
So, I'm sorry, I didn't really.
So that's not general work, 60-40, that's just you?
That's how, that's just me.
Okay.
That's how my salary is.
Okay, all right. I was looking more at the total.
Anything else, Ms. Aguilar?
No, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Ms. Martin?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. May I ask Mr. Janowski a question? The 60-40 split, 60 to the Board of Ed, 40 to the town. Is that correct?
Correct.
How does that work with, in prior years, as the town finance director, that took 100% of your time? Now you're saying that you can do that same amount of work at 40%. My math's horrible, but I don't get it.
So duties have been allocated, reallocated in the finance department within town hall. And honestly, I'll probably be putting in a little more time myself.
So it would be more than the 40%. I mean, when we're in a budget, you are here 18 hours a day.
Yeah, so the allocation was based upon a normal work week. There will be periods where, yes, I will be spending more time on the town side. When the board budget is put together, I'll be spending more time on the board side.
Understandable.
So there'll be shifts there. When we're going out for bonding, and I'm working with bond counsel and financial advisor, I'll be spending probably more time on the town side there. But as you know, some of the bonding resolutions are board related, so there's a lot of co-mingling time there.
Absolutely.
But that's, just to be clear, we've kind of been living that for the past 15 months. So I don't think really anything would be changing.
Okay, thank you for that. When this was first brought to us, there were two communities that you had mentioned that have this kind of an arrangement. One was Madison, and I think the other one was Wilton. And you had mentioned that you would get us information on what their structure was and stuff. Do we have any?
So both of those are at different stages of development of the joint finance department.
So
Madison, I would say, has been in that. They've had a joint department for what I can tell, at least 10 years. Wilton, it's only been a couple of years. So they're kind of more like what we are. They have two separate departments acting in two separate locations, whereas Madison is one location, one department. So there's slight differences. As far as head count, we're dealing with roughly the same size departments. That they're not.
You're talking about Madison now.
Yeah, so to compare Wilton with us, which is probably a closer comparison because they are running more two parallel departments with one joint finance director. They're, if you did an FTE count, pretty close to where we are. Again, they have some hybrid positions on the board side that handle some of the business office functions like transportation and food service, which is what we're kind of creating a hybrid administrative position to handle some of this.
There's no information available as far as comparison.
It was difficult getting information out of Wilton. I think she's busy.
I'm sure she is. May I ask the town attorney a question?
Yes, Ms. Martin.
Mr. Leo, the charter issue bothers me, and I know you have spoken and had an opinion which I always respect, but the part of the charter that says the town council cannot do anything to dilute or diffuse or something like that, the authority of the first selectman. And then this agreement goes on to say that the first selectman delegates his authority to the Board of Ed, or I'm not specific on that, but for Board of Education issues, or he decides, or he picks somebody, or I think it says delegate. if we vote for this, are we not, if the town council votes for this, are we not diluting the first selectman's powers?
I don't see that as a dilution, because I think the charter is clear, I had to pull up, but I don't know, but I think the charter is clear that the selectman shall appoint the director of finance to the finance department, which is being done within this agreement. The Board of Education, policy talks about its administration, finance standpoint as well. So there's a separate Board of Education finance department, and then we have a town finance department. And what we have is the first selectman duties pursuant to the charter have nothing to do, as you know, statutorily or otherwise, with the Board of Education. So his delegated authority has to do with duties inherent to a position that is not within his control anyway. And so he's delegating certain authorities for the director of finance that have to do with school-related issues anyway that he has no control over. So this body has no authority to dilute duties that he otherwise doesn't have in any event. And so the charter does not give him any authority over the Board of Education. This body can't give him any authority over the Board of Education. However, this position is serving a dual capacity, and so the appointment is pursuant to charter. The authority for supervisory authority at the town side pursuant to charter rests with the first selectman. But with respect to other issues, he certainly needs to be consulted, or will do so pursuant to the agreement with the superintendent, who's going to have a much better understanding of what his performance of Mr. Banowski's duties and finance director's duties as it relates to board education issues.
Right. I understand what you're saying, but I'm still really uncomfortable with the delegating authority.
Okay.
That's all right. That's my concern with this. And like, again, we've said, I think everyone agrees, and I just want to reiterate again, this is not an issue of Mr. Banowski's competence, which we all have utmost respect for, but I'm not comfortable with this. And I appreciate the research that you've done on it and coming to share with us this evening. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right, thank you, Ms. Martin. Is there any other discussion?
Mr. Chairman, just a motion to fix a typo within the shared services agreement.
A typo, Mr. Mauer. Is it a Scrivener's error?
It is. It's actually that there was an item left bracketed under Connecticut general statutes, but left bracketed where it should be removed.
Go ahead, Mr. Mauer.
A motion to amend the shared services agreement as presented to remove the brackets around Connecticut general statutes on the first page, third paragraph.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Aguilar. Any other discussion? Any other discussion? Calling for a vote. All in favor of the amendment to the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Mr. Reed?
Can I grunt?
Did I hear Mr. Rooney?
Am I allowed to grunt? No, I. Jason knows what that.
I heard.
Yes. Yes, sir, Mr. Chair, I'm here.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Rooney.
On the first page, third paragraph, Connecticut general statutes is still in brackets. It's right in the fourth line. And just to remove those brackets.
Well, no. That's not enough.
Yes, Mr. Townshend.
The brackets are there because it is a quote, and the reference gives clarity to the reference in the quote, which is the purpose of brackets. The quote itself does not say Connecticut general statute, it says something different, so I made a change within the quote and kept the brackets.
I misunderstood that as the intent. I thought it was part of the quote. As such, I withdraw my motion.
Unfortunately, Mr. Mayor.
We already voted on the motion.
Already voted on it.
I move to reinsert the bracket on the Connecticut General Statutes, first page, third paragraph, with apologies.
Thank you, Ms. Mauer. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Martin. Any discussion? I'd like to apologize to the town attorney. I am calling for a vote. All in favor of this motion by Mr. Mauer to return the brackets to the agreement, please say aye. Aye. Mr. Reed?
Aye.
And that was Mr. Rooney as well. Thank you very much. Yep, thank you, Mr. Rooney. Okay, so we will move on.
Garbage.
We will move on to the main motion with brackets. If there's any other discussion.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, Mr.
I just wanted to get on the record. When I introduced this, I wanted to let others speak first. I just wanted to emphasize that on the town side, you know, as I know was on the board of that side, there was significant due diligence done by myself, the HR director, and Mr. Radowski in terms of looking at some of these other communities. We talked about Wilton and Madison, and all the feedback we got from both, that I got from both the first select persons and I believe the HR director got from his counterparts were no regrets, no downside. It's a no-brainer, definitely working, no reservations in doing this, and it's been working very well. So I just want to make sure that, I know I mentioned that at the FEPS meeting when we had that meeting, but I want to make sure it was brought out here. And the only other comment I want to make, in addition to the town attorney's comments relative to you know, delegation of responsibilities, I obviously am clear that the charter requires my appointment of a director. It is, however, it's silent on many of the reporting relationships relative to directors or department heads. And there are other department heads that I'm responsible for appointing, but I have delegated supervision to another member of staff. Example would be in many of the land use departments where the town planner supervises a department head. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kellogg. I'm going to put this up to a vote. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those, Mr. Reed?
Aye.
And Mr. Rooney?
Aye.
Thank you. All those opposed? Ms. Martin. This motion passes 8 to 1. Excuse me. Our next resolution, item C, Resolution 21-74, to consider and act upon a resolution regarding job description revisions in the Finance Department. Vice Chair LaPellis?
Yes, that's 74, correct?
74.
Okay, I move that the town council adopt resolution 21-74. Resolved that the town council hereby approves the proposed revisions to the following job descriptions and authorizes the first selectman to implement as soon as practical.
Thank you, Vice Chair LaPellis. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Mauer. Discussion, Mr. Kellogg.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So there are 3 job descriptions that are revised in this resolution. One is the Director of Finance, position we've been discussing. You have both a clean and a red line version. That's been revised to obviously reflect the increased responsibilities of that position and the fact that it is shared with the Monroe Public Schools. The second is the Assistant Director of Municipal Finance. I guess that we alluded to a little bit earlier, and one of the comments that I heard from the other communities that had this arrangement was that part of the success of the arrangement is the strength of the deputies. So I want to thank Mr. Radowski and Mr. Hirsch for working, and I know that on this particular job description, because the assistant director position, which is the former deputy director of finance, will be renamed assistant director of municipal finance. is taking on significant responsibilities, which is one of the reasons why it makes this shared director position work, because there are duties that must be shed from the director of finance, and those are largely falling, many of that is falling on this new position. And last but not least is the position of accountant being renamed accounting supervisor. And this is where we have the largest, this is where a lot of the resources are come to play. This is a position that is going from it's not in the current, I guess the existing job description didn't highlight it, but this is an existing part-time position that would now go to full-time. So that is where a lot of the capacity gets achieved. So there's significant responsibilities that the former deputy director was responsible for, which would now be transitioned to a new supervisory position in the finance department. And with that, obviously, Mr. Banowski and Mr. Hirsch are here. If there's any questions that I can't address.
Thank you, Mr. Kellogg. Is there any other discussion? Is there any other discussion? Hearing no other discussion, I'm going to call for a vote. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All, Mr. Reed?
Aye.
Thank you. And Mr. Rooney?
Aye.
Thank you, Mr. Rooney. The ayes have it, 9-0. Item D, Resolution 2197. To consider and act upon a resolution regarding Energy Resources USA installment sales agreement. Vice Chair Lapellis.
I move that the Town Council adopt Resolution 21-97, resolved that Kenneth N. Kellogg, First Selectman of the Town of Monroe, is authorized to execute and deliver on behalf of the Town of Monroe the installment sales agreement and any associated documents by and between Energy Resources USA for the Town Hall Chiller and lighting upgrade project at Town Hall.
Thank you, Ms. Lapellis. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Mauer?
Yes.
Seconded by Mr. Mauer. Discussion, Mr. Kellogg.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So, as I mentioned during the budget process for fiscal year 22, the Town Hall chilled water HVAC system has exceeded its service life and needs to be replaced. The Department of Public Works, I want to thank Director Nowacki and Deputy Director Phillips for all of their hard work in doing some due diligence and research in this. They've been pursuing an opportunity to combine this project with some energy efficient lighting upgrades, which I've been needling them to move forward on for a while. It was one of the projects we wanted to get going, so I appreciate their efforts in that regard. And doing so, getting financial incentives from Eversource for energy efficiency improvements. They've come up with a proposal that is consistent with our purchasing policy, utilizing vendors that are on a state bid for energy efficiency retrofits and cost-saving services for existing buildings, and using vendors that are approved by Eversource for their program. Energy Resources USA was identified as the most favorable vendor. It's a project that is nearly a $400,000 project that we will get a offset in incentives from Eversource of more than 10%, $42,000 and change. And furthermore, the vendor will offer us an extended monthly payment schedule for 3 years, so we can comfortably fit that in our operating budget and get a capital project done without adding to our bonding obligations. Furthermore, the LED lighting and other energy savings of the new system would save us projected to save us almost $14,500 on an annual basis ongoing. I want to thank the town attorney for going through this, and his letter of opinion is attached as well. And I would just say, if the need for the replacement of the chiller is not obvious from the temperature and humidity in this room, I've been promised that it was not a setup, but it just goes to the fact that the system is of an age where I can attest that it's been very comfortable, very comfortable even in some of the hotter days, but when it gets extremely hot and extremely humid, that is when the system starts to break down and not be able to keep up heat and humidity, and that's why the system needs to be replaced. So, with that, turn turn over any questions or other comments. Obviously, Mr. Nowacki and Mr. Phillips can answer any questions you may have as well.
Thank you, Mr. Kellogg. Is there any other discussion? Hearing no other discussion, I'm going to call for a vote. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Mr. Reed?
Aye.
And I heard Mr. Rooney say aye. The ayes have it, 9-0. All right, next item, item E, Resolution 2198. Consider and act upon a resolution regarding Valley Emergency Medical Service Letter of Agreement. Vice Chair LaPellis.
I move that the Town Council adopt Resolution 21-98, resolved that Kenneth N. Kellogg, First Selectman of the Town of Monroe, is authorized to execute and deliver on behalf of the Town of Monroe the letter of agreement dated June 10, 2021, and any associated documents by and between Valley Emergency Medical Services Incorporated to extend our current staffing agreement to June 30, 2022. Be it further resolved, the Town Council waives 3.3 of the town's purchasing policy with respect to this matter for the reasons as stated by the First Selectman in his memorandum dated June 24, 2021.
Thank you, Vice Chair LaPellis. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Mauer. Discussion. Mr. Kellogg.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So you'll recall approximately a year ago, we had a very similar situation where our agreement with Valley EMS to provide supplemental contract services was up for, it was due to expire. At that time, Council authorized an amendment to the agreement which allowed for ongoing ability for one-year extensions at rates to be agreed upon in subsequent years. So to that end, we have before us an offer to extend for 1 year at a 2% increase in fees. That is a amount that was incorporated and anticipated in our budget process. However, given that the amendment certainly did not contemplate the specific terms, I thought it was appropriate to bring it before council. Furthermore, I think it's appropriate that the council entertain and actually act on the bid waiver. And again, it would be for the same reasons that were done last year.
Thank you, Mr. Kellogg. Is there any other discussion?
I would just like to comment that in addition to our EMS chief and deputy chief, have also given me their input that they are very pleased with this service like we continue. And I know our chair of our EMS commission, Mr. Brennan, is here as well. I believe the commission supports this as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kellogg. Is there any other discussion?
Mr.
Mauer.
I fully support this for this year. I would ask if going forward, as we do have an agreement, knowing that we can do at least a 1 year discussion, if it might be prudent throughout the year to have the discussion of extending on a longer basis for a little bit less of an increase per year, if that's something that they would be open to, considering the fact that it's a service that our commission seems extremely happy with.
Yeah, I'd be happy to entertain that. I believe we, simply had to move forward with what we had before us at this point, and the pandemic being such that a lot of these things had to
completely agree.
Move along as they had been. So thank you.
Anything else, Mr. Mauer?
No, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Is there any other discussion? Any other discussion? Hearing no discussion, I'm calling for a vote. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Mr. Reed?
Aye.
And that is Mr. Reed and Mr. Rooney voting aye. This passes 9-0. Item F, Resolution 2199, to consider and act upon a resolution regarding Indemnia Identity and Security USA LLC Live Scan System Sales Agreement. Vice Chair LaPellis.
I move that the Town Council adopt Resolution 21-99. Resolved that Kenneth N. Kellogg, First Selectman of the Town of Monroe, is authorized to execute and deliver on behalf of the Town of Monroe the sales agreement and any associated documents by and between Indemnia Identity and Security USA LLC for the Live Scan fingerprinting system.
Thank you, Ms. LaPellis. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Mauer. I did hear him first. Mr. Kellogg.
Thank you. So you'll recall that the Town Council last year, by Resolution 20-100, authorized the the chief to acquire or transfer assets from the state Department of Emergency Services and Public Protection for their automated fingerprint identification system. This agreement is now to secure that certain technology. The chief has advised me that these funds are contemplated in his operating budget. And it has been reviewed by the town attorney. I believe the chief may be on the remote call as well if you have further questions. But this is obviously to continue to upgrade and be able to maintain our automated fingerprint system in the police department.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kellogg. If Chief Salvatore is online and he would like to speak, please do so now by unmuting yourself.
Good evening, Mr. Chair. Yes, this is actually an expansion or an enhancement of the LifeScan system provided by the state, which is due to go online July 26th or thereabouts after repeated delays between the transition of the old vendor to the new vending system by Ademia. The funds were approved in the fiscal year 22 budget. So all this really is a review of the agreement, and you have, I believe, the town attorney's letter.
Thank you, Chief. Is there any other discussion on this matter? Hearing no discussion, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Mr. Reed?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. I heard Mr. Rooney and Mr. Reed both vote aye. This passes 9-0. Letter G on our agenda, Resolution 21-100, to consider and act upon a resolution regarding WMNR fiscal year 2022 budget. Madam Vice Chair.
I move that the town council adopt resolution 21-100, resolve that fiscal year 2022 proposed budget for WMNR is hereby approved as presented.
Thank you, Madam Vice Chair. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by D.D. Martin. Discussion. Mr. Kellogg, Mr. Anderson is here.
Thank you. Now, I'd be happy to introduce this. So, as you're all very familiar with, it has been custom to have both the town council and the board of finance review and approve WMNR's budget, despite the fact that it does operate outside of the operating budget through the generosity of their listeners. You've got the memo from Mr. Anderson from earlier this year. I'd be happy to have him elaborate if he would desire, or if any council members have any questions for him, but I think it's fairly straightforward and customary as to what we've seen in the past from MNR.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions for Mr. Anderson or the First Selectman, Mr. Mauer?
Mr. Chair, just a heartfelt thank you for all of the work that you've done year after year to keep this going and keep this operating outside of the expense of the town. It's a wonderful service, so thank you.
I wanted to do hip hop.
Mr. Anderson won't let me.
Ms. Martin?
I just want to thank Mr. Anderson also. 38 years.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Mr. Anderson, any comments about the budget?
Well, it's the easiest vote you'll ever have because you're not spending a dime of the taxpayers' money. In fact, we contribute $39,400 in July 1 to finance and HR. But I've done some research, and it's fascinating. We have recent listeners and donors from 120 towns in Connecticut in 32 different states. So what was started as a Monroe-only station in 1973 that just barely covered a couple of towns is grown and transformed, and that growth and transformation, fortunately, didn't cost the Monroe taxpayers a dime. It's a classic case of the people who want to support it pay for it, and nobody who doesn't have to. Well, fine print, yes, we do get a $77,000 a year grant from the Corporation of Public Broadcasting, which is funded by the federal government. But $77,000 out of our $650,000 budget is a pretty small number. And unlike many people, if it went away, we would be just fine because we're all volunteer broadcasters. 2 of us pay full-time, part-time people. There's just a lot of goodwill and a lot of people who like the Broadway and big bands on the weekend, and they just love classical music. And I just want to let the town know that I've worked hard this last, as always, but particularly this last year, to make sure that WMR had opinions about the music, but not about current contemporary events. So no politics, nothing about, it was one place people could join together and just enjoy Bach, Beethoven, or Broadway music. And I say that not just from personal conviction, but it's a winning formula. I have major donors from both sides who just enjoy this wonderful place as a resident. And it's great that most media makes money by having it, and we make it by not having one, which represents the town very well as a collateral secondary measure. I just wanted to bring you up to measure of the speed on that. We're very fortunate, and I thank you all for your indirect support these many years that have led us to be there.
I remember you in that little room at Massa.
Yeah.
Yes, right, to start out.
That was when we were a high school station.
Yep.
Pat O'Hara was a broadcaster, so were some other people. We moved on and we did even when we were a high school station, it was always self-funded. So thank you. It's great that the little town could allow us to do our own thing and to have this sort of support that we received. $17 million in 38 years.
Thank you very much, Mr. Anderson, for all your hard work. And as you've been thanked by, I'm sure, everyone on Town Council for all your hard work. Thank you very much. I'm going to call for a vote, hearing no other discussion. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Mr. Reed?
Aye.
And Mr. Rooney? Mr. Rooney?
Oh, aye.
Thank you very much, Mr. Rooney. That passes 9-0. Letter H, Resolution 21-101, to consider and act upon a resolution regarding revisions to the Town of Monroe pay plan for the positions in classified service. Madam Vice Chair.
I move the Town Council adopt Resolution 21-101, resolved that pursuant to Town Charter Chapter 10, Section 3, the pay plan for the positions in the classified service is hereby amended as presented by the First Selectman.
Thank you, Madam Vice Chair. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Mauer. Discussion, Mr. Kellogg.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First, I want to extend my thanks to HR Director Craig Hirsch, who's here with us tonight, for doing the work in this regard. As you know, the council has approved revisions to job descriptions relative to the shared services agreement with the Board of Education. Consistent with that, there's significant increased responsibilities to two positions, which are changing in title as well. Consistent with that, he's done some research and recommended these changes to the range for those two positions that are in the unaffiliated section of the pay plan.
Thank you, Mr. Kellogg. Is there any other discussion on this matter? Hearing no other discussion, I'm going to call for a vote. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Mr. Reed?
Aye.
And that was Mr. Rooney as well. This passes 9-0. Letter I this evening, Resolution 21-102, to consider and act upon a resolution regarding the Economic and Community Development Director job description. Madam Vice Chair.
I move that the Town Council adopt Resolution 21-102, resolved that the Town Council hereby approves the proposed Director of Economic and Community Development job description and authorizes the First Selectman to implement as soon as practical.
Thank you, Madam Vice Chair. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Donaldin Wales. Discussion, Mr. Kellogg.
Thank you again. So again, I want to thank HR Director Craig Hirsch for his efforts in this regard as well, in assisting me in putting this together. As you know, we have a new the budget that starts July 1st has a new has the Economic Development Department with a new director position. We've endeavored to craft the job description consistent with what I discussed and proposed during the budget process, which would be a high-level strategic partner for the town to work with the Economic and Community Economic Development Commission for economic development matters, to be that liaison to me relative to those efforts, and to additionally work on a broad range of grant-related responsibilities, actually taking some of the responsibilities that are currently with the Finance Department and taking on some of those responsibilities as well to further assist in regards to finance workload, and also continue to support the town relative to projects and provide project management services to various community and other projects as well. So again, I want to thank Mr. Hirsch for his efforts in putting this together. Obviously, with that, I ask that you move this forward.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kellogg. Is there any other discussion on this item this evening? Mr. Mauer.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, First Selectman Kellogg. As you know, this has been a position that we've discussed multiple times in the past, and I can speak for some of my colleagues who have asked to see this. I'm glad to see that it's time for Monroe to move in this direction, and I look forward to seeing what this position can do for the town as a whole and for the burden of our taxpayers. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Mauer. As I said, through the budget process, I think we've made a lot of procedural, structural, and regulatory changes in the town, and we are at the point now where I think this position will be beneficial and continue to move us forward. Thank you.
Thank you. I did see Ms. Aguilar.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Kellogg, will this job go out will it be posted?
So subsequent to, assume it is approved, I will be meeting with the HR director, this week, and we will, proceed with the process of recruitment.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Any other discussion? Hearing no other discussion, I'm going to call for a vote. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Mr. Reed?
Aye.
Mr. Rooney?
Aye.
All right, this passes 9-0. That concludes our new business for the evening. Our second public participation. Given that there are no unresolved matters of unfinished business and no unresolved matters of new business, there's no second public participation this evening. I'm adjourning this meeting at 9:38 p.m.